Let's talk security. Let's talk water. Let's talk roads. Let's talk the price of food and the stresses affecting farmers, the stresses affecting vendors, the conditions of our markets. Let us discuss the national infrastructure. This is Phillip Edward Alexander inviting you to join us on March 25th at Ramsaran Street from 5 p.m. so that we can discuss the issues that affect your life and make Trinidad and Tobago better for all of us.
One people under one flag. It's time for change, it's time we vote to be. Come on, let me fix it. We go fix it. Build a better TNT. Phillip, we go fix it. We go fix it. Because we vote in PEP.
Phillip will fix it.
Vote PEP.
Good afternoon. We have a lot going on in studio. We're managing situations as we progress, dealing with information as it comes to hand. A lot is going on. I am joined today by a pro-vice chancellor of the University of the West Indies and former principal, former member of parliament, former government minister, Dr. Botiwari. Good day, Doc.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me.
You can see us on our screen, and that's
Thanks
your camera.
for inviting me.
And as usual, our co-host, Stephen Matteson.
Thank you this evening. Welcome again. Thanks for being on your program.
We're back on a Thursday. Doc, you were saying something, any opening comments?
No, I was just going to say, you know, that I am not here in a partisan capacity, but I am not afraid to talk about political issues. I'm a citizen of this country, and there are all kinds of things happening in the world and happening here, and the discussion in Trinidad and Tobago is rather narrow and limited, and I don't think it is good for the public welfare, and nor is it good for the general good. And therefore, I feel we have to open up the discussion a little bit.
Absolutely agree with you. There are a lot of stuff going on in Trinidad and Tobago right now politically, and I think that people are almost numb punch drunk. So much is happening. Before the show started, you and I were talking about a couple things off air. One thing we're talking about is the politicization of so many key positions of
Institutions.
authority, with the recent elevation of someone as political as Christine Kangalo to the office of presidency. The thing that should cause Trinidadians pause is when you have people who share the same ideology, come from the same party in two positions that one wants to be a check and balance on the other. When you remove any conscience, because the presidency has practically no check and balance on the prime minister. At the end of the day, it does what the prime minister wishes. But A&R Robinson showed that you could still make a public point and cause some disquiet if you disagree with what the prime minister is doing. Doc, how you feel about someone that's sipping from the same cup being elevated to that position?
I wish it had been done differently. I think I wrote, I think it was mishandled both by the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition, to be frank. I think if the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition had had a discussion and the Prime Minister had agreed that the leader, he would accept any nomination from the leader of the opposition. I think if the leader of the opposition had given him 3 names, one maybe aligned or connected somehow to the PNM, somehow connected to the UNC, and someone decidedly above partisan politics, and say, well, okay, here are my 3 names. You, the Prime Minister, you have the majority in Parliament, you choose, but these are people I'd be comfortable with. Before the announcement, it could have made a difference. But I think once the Prime Minister's mind was made up that he had a candidate and this was the person he wanted, it would have been very difficult for him to change his mind given the context that emerged. I don't think it's the ideal thing for a person who had been closely identified with partisan politics to become the president when you have other options. But I think now that she's president, we must give her the respect that the office demands, but monitor how she behaves. For instance, one of the things that she said was that she's going to operate, and we must be careful that she honors what she says, chief diplomat, and basically engaging the population in a certain way, and that does not become chief campaigner or mobilizer.
See, when you say that, and I'll pass it to you now, but when you say things like that, I remember powers that you think I have, I do not. And
Yes.
powers that you do not think I have, I do. I remember getting caught up with that statement to the point where I became an instant fan of the man. and then we got nothing in return.
Yeah,
Stephen?
well,
No, I want to say that decision represents one of the inherent feelings of our Constitution. To the extent that we boast that we have a Westminster system and separation of powers. And one of the things, if you look at what happens in Britain with the Queen, there is, even after the House of Lords was removed from being like they run like the Senate or run like a court. You had a system. You have a system where you have absolute separation of powers. In Trinidad and Tobago, if you examine how most decisions are made, you'll realize that the Prime Minister almost has absolute power.
Under our constitution, the Prime Minister does.
Right.
Yes.
So really, even when you talk about the powers that I have, you think I don't. Really and truly, the President is really an edict of the Prime Minister in a lot of ways.
I don't agree with that, and I've also written on that for the public to try and understand. The President has a fair amount of power in his or her own right, in this case her right. And the Constitution gives the President that power. A lot depends in this Constitution. In the 1962 Constitution, where we had a Governor General, and especially in this 1976 Constitution, where we have a President, on the extent to which the President and the Prime Minister are able to work together and align, if that operates, it can augur well for the development of the society. If it operates in a partisan way, it can heavily politicize the society. And if it operates where the President and the Prime Minister are in contradiction with each other, it can also cause some problems in the society. So the ideal that you want is really someone, regardless of how they got there, once they become president, is that you want that person to
function as your natural
country first.
Yeah, put country first, and to function, to allow the government to operate and to be helpful to the government, but to stand up for the people and the population and for principle when that is demanded, because there are going to be times
the
like
closest
that.
we had to that was the NRO.
Yeah.
To a large extent.
So he was his own man.
So I want to ask a question. Then, we've had changes suggested by former Prime Minister Manning of an executive president. We saw where that went. Are you then advocating for more oversight power for the president?
No, I think the presidency that we have now and the prime ministership, the constitution we have now, I think what it does is that it places too much executive power in the hands of the prime minister and too much of a ceremonial role in the hands of the president. But that if the prime minister and the president want to work together to achieve common objectives that are national, they can be valuable. But if it is common objectives that are political, it could be a problem. By that I mean partisan political. It could be a problem. So that is an issue that we have to deal with. But if you talk in constitution reform, I think the time has come for us to look at the possibility of whether the person who actually a constitution is where power exists and how it should be balanced and distributed and checked and contained.
But it should be based on service to the greater good.
Always a constitution must serve the public welfare, the greater good, the society, the sustainability of the society. What we've had is,
over the years, we've concentrated the power of the prime minister. What you are talking about now is, to some extent, diluting the power of the prime minister.
No. You give the power. You can't.
No prime minister wants more oversight on him. When you get there, you want to be able to ram your plans home.
The thing is,
no, I don't think that is good
the thing
for
is,
the country.
we will all agree, and Professor just said it, that the Prime Minister has a kind of supreme power in this
Under the
this
Constitution,
constitutional arrangement.
yes.
The President is largely a ceremonial kind of role. And the question must be asked, can we do without a president? I mean, for those who are talking about constitutional reform, can we do without a president? Without a president, then what? I would agree that, I fully agree with what you said, Dr. Bo, that the ideal situation is a situation where we respect what the Constitution would have had it out to be. How it was designed. It was designed that not the president perform any checks and balance role, but the last person, or the person who would say that this is the right thing or this is the wrong thing, that kind of thing, as opposed to just being a ceremonial role. The Constitution says that the president, the prime minister, on the advice of the prime minister, the president will make this decision, but the president will always make the decision once the prime minister says to do it. Yeah. And that's
a fancy way of saying the prime minister instructs.
Prime Minister what?
Instructs the president. Yeah. It's a fancy way of saying it. And I want to say, because you just said something, and we have to have these conversations. We've played a meandering role in the United Kingdom, Great Britain, England, in a country where people's name and reputation and their status in society are more important to them than even a prime ministership. We saw that. We saw prime ministers walk away from the job rather than damage their own reputation or their family name. In Trinidad, that doesn't happen. That is a natural check and balance in England. If we want to copy Westminster, we have to have things in place to replace that. Here, people don't care.
If we want to copy Westminster, we have to start with how the Parliament is constituted in Westminster. Real Westminster, the head, the leader of the person who sits as the Speaker of the House, that person is chosen from among the opposition.
Well, not always.
Right?
Not always.
Could be. But I want to say this.
Not
when
always.
you're looking at it, right, things happened in the evolution of what became the British Parliament, and you would know a lot more about that. In Trinidad, trying to say that we have a Senate, what's the real purpose of our Senate? Our Senate,
Yeah.
when Prime Minister Pandey took 2 Tobago senators and replaced them with people who did what he wanted, it proved the point that the Senate was a rubber stamp. If the Senate is a rubber stamp, the president is a muppet, then what's the point of all those salaries?
Well, you see, the president under our current constitution senators, then that could make a difference. You might be able to pass a bill in Parliament because, but when it goes to the Senate, the representatives.
But you saying the independent senators?
Yeah, the independent senators. But if you have a situation in which the majority prevails in the House of Representatives, and a situation in which the independent senators also acquiesce in the Senate, it weakens your legislative apparatus and framework. And so those are one of the things. The appointments that the president makes is very important, and to the extent that she puts or is able to put independent, capable, competent people in charge in any of the offices that she appoints, that makes a difference.
Exactly.
The current constitution might not be perfect, but it can work if integrity is applied and applies. But my own feeling is, given everything that we've been through now, I think we've reached a point where we really need to have serious constitution reform
Discussions on it. Yes.
that makes a difference in the way the country is governed, that makes a difference in the governance institutions, that makes a difference in the demands it makes for public behavior and service to the country. I think we reached that point.
Absolutely. But we need to have a starting point. I would like to suggest local government as it exists is a waste of time. You can't have both. You can't have ministers and local government councillors with the same responsibilities.
No, I agree. Local government should run their own show.
We have a suggestion, and I wanted to make the suggestion to you. We have a suggestion because the way it's set up, the corporations, the constituencies, the police model, the regional health authorities, the way they're all set up and the differences in the amount and the numbers, it makes it almost impossible for seamless communication and get stuff done. We advocate to abolish the Municipal Corporations Act and replace the local government with something called a Constituency Board of Supervisors.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
Let me break it down for you quick. A supervisor of public works, public utilities, healthcare, education, and security. So that the member of parliament with that board of supervisors could function like a mini responder, important in the day-to-day life of
As
people.
a board of supervisors within a particular confine borough
Yeah,
or something?
within
So
Diego Martin West.
That's like a federal system then?
A federal system. You could say that. All 41 constituencies, each of them become autonomous with their local taxes to operate education, healthcare, telling you which constituencies are a good place to live because this constituency has water.
No, if it's so simple.
Well,
My response is always
I
corruption.
am not sure what the exit to the people. And you are also saying make a significant distinction between what the central government does and what your council in the constituency does. So I see the value of that kind of thinking. But you see, I think that if we are rethinking the society, we have to rethink a lot of things. I mean, the society that we know and have has gone through an experience of 60 years of independence. That has not been a perfect journey of 60 years. In fact, it has gotten us to the point where we are in serious financial difficulty and a debt problem. If peace is declared and the price of energy comes down. All right, we already have a problem, but it's going to get